Oh, sorry, just how long are we speaking until, and how long are we leaving for questions? Is it 10 minutes for questions or 15?
The webinar is actually for an hour and a half. So, I mean, we can obviously just see how it goes, but I'm guessing that you'll probably each speak for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have lots of time for questions. Yesterday, the presentations went for an hour, and then there were 30 minutes for questions.
Okay.
So, just give you a little sense.
Okay.
So we'll get started in 2 minutes. Let's give everybody a chance to log in. Okay. I think we can go ahead and get started. So welcome, everyone. There are 46 people who've logged in to watch this webinar, and we're really delighted that you would join us. We know this is a time with a lot of stress and a lot of questions around income support programs. So we're very happy to provide this presentation to you, which will be recorded and made available on our website as soon as possible, along with the slides. My name is Jennifer Stone. I'm the Executive Director of Neighborhood Legal Services, and it's my great pleasure to introduce our social assistance income security legal team. We have Seema Kawar, who articled at Neighborhood Legal Services and has been running our social assistance practice for the last year. This is actually her swan song because the maternity leave cover that she was providing over the last year has now come to an end. So thank you, Seema, for the presentation today, and we wish you all the best in your next adventures. And with Seema is Daniel Bastien, who is a community legal worker and newly minted paralegal, who's joined our income security practice from a long labor organizing background. So also in the background is our colleague Brendan Jowett, who is facilitating the YouTube live stream. So we're tucking and rolling with figuring out remote work and new technologies to keep everyone safe. But we remain open and here to provide legal services during the pandemic. I'll pass it on now, but just one last logistical point, which is to kindly put your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll be monitoring them. Brendan will be monitoring questions coming through the YouTube live stream, and we will ask the presenters after their presentations are over. So do stay tuned for your questions at the end. Thanks so much. Seema, take it away.
All right, thank you, Jenny. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So just to get started, I just wanted to make it clear that we're here and very happy to provide you with legal information about what's going on with social assistance in this climate with COVID-19, but we're not providing legal advice. So it's going to be general information, whereas legal advice would apply to your specific circumstances, right? So if you do need legal advice and you're in our catchment area, please do come to our clinic. Well, now we have a phone number you can contact us by, which I will provide. Otherwise, if you need specific legal advice, please contact your local legal aid clinic. And you can find the one that serves your neighborhood by going to this link right here. And if you put in your postal code, you find the clinic that would assist you. So just a bit of background about NLS. We're a nonprofit and independent community legal clinic. We've been serving our community since 1973, and we serve low-income individuals who live in our catchment area and qualify for our services. So the areas of law we practice are housing, immigration, social assistance, and employment law. So to qualify for our services, you must live in our catchment area. So our catchment area, the boundaries are Yonge Street East to the Don Valley Parkway and Bloor Street South to the Toronto Islands. You must also qualify financially under the Legal Aid Ontario guidelines. So typically when you would call us, we would have to ask questions about your sources of income, etc., to make sure you qualify. So just an overview about what we're going to discuss today. We're going to first talk about the types of assistance that are available to individuals who are not already receiving money from Ontario Works or Ontario Disability Support Program. So those are emergency assistance and the Canada Emergency Assistance Benefit. And then we'll move on to, so Daniel will discuss what assistance is available to people who are already receiving ODSP and OW and any policy changes they should know about. So people who receive ODSP and OW may also qualify for the for the Canada Emergency Assistance Benefit. So we will discuss what impact that will have on their social assistance if they do qualify for it and receive it. Okay, so the assistance available for people who are not already on the ODSP or OW programs during the pandemic. First, there's emergency assistance. So it can be accessed through Ontario Works. And as I said, it's specifically for individuals who are not already on OW or ODSP. So it's a provincial program, and the provincial governments made recent changes to the legislation and policy during this pandemic. So firstly, the maximum period for assistance is now extended to 48 days. So it used to be half a month, but now an individual can be paid for up to 48 days. There used to be a policy where you could only apply once in a 6-month period for emergency assistance, but now that has been suspended. So if a person needs to, they can apply more than once in a 6-month period. So who can apply? So you have to be, a low-income family or individual, not already be receiving OW or ODSP or federal assistance such as employment insurance, and not a tourist or visitor, and you face an emergency situation where you can't meet basic needs or shelter expenses, and failure to receive the assistance will result in danger to the physical health of a member of a family, or result in one or more children being unable to continue to reside with the parents requesting assistance. So notice that a person has to fulfill all of these requirements together to qualify for emergency assistance. And type examples of emergency situations may be that you or your family are affected by COVID-19, you're being evicted from your home, you're in or living in an abusive relationship, or you're worried about your safety. and how to apply. So the link right here is where you can apply online. You could also apply at your local OW office. So there's a link here for how to locate your local office. You would input your postal code and it would tell you. Although during this time, most offices are now closed, so you would have to reach them by phone. And this is just a note here that if you do live in a First Nations community or are under the age of 18, you can't apply online for emergency assistance. So you do have to contact your local Ontario Works office to apply. And basically the first thing to do when applying is just to collect the information that you need. So personal details about you and for you and your family, your housing costs, your family's total income and available assets, any bank account information if you do have one, so that you can receive the money as soon as possible. So a worker at Ontario Works at your local office will review your application, and within 4 business days, they'll contact you. They may ask for more information, such as copies of bills or other documents, but if they don't need any other additional information, they'll tell you whether or not you're approved and how much you can expect to receive. So when we talk about the amount people can receive, it does depend on your specific situation. So the administrator at Ontario Works has discretion to decide based on your particular circumstances. So in most cases, the maximum amounts you would get is the same that you would receive if you were receiving Ontario Works. So for example, for a single person who needs help for food and shelter would receive $733 a month, and that number would increase if you have children. And you could be paid for up to 48 days depending on the situation. So that's the maximum. If you need support beyond 48 days, you should make an application for Ontario Works using this link right here, or by calling your local office. So if you're not certain for how long you'll need the assistance for, it may be a sound idea to apply for Ontario Works, because you would get the same rates anyway, and for a longer period if you do qualify for Ontario Works. And now we'll move on to the Canada Emergency Response Benefits. So this is a federal income support benefit. It provides $500 per week for up to 16 weeks to eligible Canadians who have been impacted by COVID-19. It's being delivered through the Canada Revenue Agency. Now it's just important to make sure that before applying you meet the requirements for eligibility. So the CERB is available to workers who meet all of the following conditions. So we'll emphasize again that all of these conditions need to be met, that you reside in Canada, you're at least 15 years old, and you have a social insurance number, and you did not quit your job voluntarily. You've stopped working, or you expect to be without employment or self-employment income for at least 14 consecutive days in the initial 4-week benefit period because of COVID-19, or you are eligible for EI, regular or sickness benefits, and you expect to have no employment income for subsequent benefit periods. So after the 4 weeks are done, you're still expecting not to receive any income, and no employment income. And in 2019, or in the 12 months before the day you begin your application, you had a total income of at least $5,000 from employment, self-employment, or EI, maternity or parental leave benefits. There have been recent expansions to CERB to help more Canadians. So right now, recent expansions include that they're allowing people to earn up to $1,000 per month while collecting CERB. It has been extended to seasonal workers who have exhausted their EI regular benefits and are unable to undertake their regular seasonal work as a result of the COVID-19 outbreak. It's extended to to workers who have recently exhausted their EI regular benefits and they're unable to find a job or return to work because of COVID-19. I'm sorry. And it's now artists are allowed to receive royalty payments for copyrighted works produced before March 1st while collecting CERB. So these changes will be retroactive to March 15th, 2020. So they're effective as of March 15th. And how to apply. So you can apply over the phone with an automated phone service by calling this number. And the information you need when you call are basically your SIN number, confirmation of your postal code, the period you're applying for, and you'll, at the end of your call, you'll declare that you qualify for the benefit. So this is quite important because right now they're not really vetting individuals who are applying, or they're not really asking for a lot of proof. So people do get approved quickly, they receive the money quickly, but they may be audited later on if it's discovered that they were never eligible for the funds. We are expecting that they would likely receive an overpayment from the CRA. So I'll get into that in a moment. But there are two other ways of applying. You can apply online through your CRA account if you have one. If you don't, you can register for a CRA account at this link right here. So just things to look out for in terms of CERB. So it is a taxable benefit. So income tax won't be deducted when you receive it, but it must be reported as income on your income tax return for the 2020 tax year. And as I mentioned earlier, they're not really asking for much proof right now. People are being approved very quickly. If you're audited in the future and they find out that you were never eligible, we expect that would result in an overpayment to the CRA. So you would owe the money back to the CRA, like Canada Revenue Agency, and this may lead to them, garnishing your tax returns, for example, in the future. So it's very important to make sure you meet all the requirements. That's why I would suggest getting legal advice if you're not sure if you qualify for CERB before applying. There have been, the government has said there is an option to pay them back if someone goes back to work earlier than they thought or discovers that they were ineligible. So that's a way to avoid a future overpayment. Okay, and I'll hand it off to Daniel to talk about changes and assistance available to current recipients of social assistance.
Thanks, Seema. So yeah, just gonna switch here. So there are some changes that affect both Ontario Works and ODSP. So they're both under the umbrella of the MCSS ministry. So Ontario Works and ODSP have, as Seema mentioned earlier, pretty much physically shut their offices and are for the most part working remotely, which means that clients and recipients are expected to communicate with their workers by telephone and by email mostly. I understand that there are some exceptions that can be made, but those are really the exception. So also in general, they've loosened the documentary requirements. So for a lot of stuff where you would normally need to provide documents to prove something, they're generally being more lenient with that, to respect social distancing. But the expectation is that once things loosen up, recipients will be expected to provide the documentation. So it's not a free-for-all or like a free pass for this. So people should be careful. Payments are also no longer being suspended because of a recipient's failure to report income. Right now, the eligibility verification process reviews are on hold. There's different medical benefits that people can access through OW and ODSP. So like the MSN transportation allowance, the breastfeeding, pregnancy nutritional allowance, the special diet allowance. Generally, if a recipient is already on that benefit, They just are extending it rather than going through a process to review if people are still eligible. This is of more interest to maybe legal practitioners, but in case there are any on this webinar, so MCSS is accepting consents and internal reviews signed by legal clinics on behalf of clients, you know, because of social distancing. So that's handy. There's also been the creation of a one-time COVID-19 discretionary benefit for OW and ODSP recipients. So it's $100 for an individual or $200 for a family. And there'll be more on this later in the presentation. So thank you, Seema. I tried to switch it, but it didn't work. There's some changes that are specific to Ontario Works. Okay, so I already mentioned the no need to provide written documentation for many things, but you have to provide them later bit. So the participation in employment assistance activities and participation agreement updates are no longer required because, you know, they're not expecting people to go out and get jobs right now. So there are reports. Okay, so this is a bit anecdotal, and I'm not sure if this is like still the case today, but up until recently at least, and possibly still today, Toronto Employment and Social Services, which administers Ontario Works, was not accepting any internal reviews, so like challenges to Ontario Works decisions. That being said, if anybody would like to challenge an Ontario Works decision, definitely seek legal advice. And this, I just want to emphasize that the situation is very fluid and that things are changing day to day. And it's not all in writing or in like policy directives. Some of this is just, you know, we call and find out that they're doing a thing differently all of a sudden with no warning. So definitely seek advice if you have any problems. So there's also reports that TESS is no longer giving out special diet supplement application forms for Ontario Works recipients to access the special dietary supplement for certain medical conditions. So what they're doing now, apparently, is people can still access the benefits, but they have to speak with their worker on the phone, and I understand have to be able to identify which medical conditions they're applying for, and that the workers are not necessarily telling the recipients what the eligible conditions are. So if anybody wants to apply for the special diet, they should definitely be prepared and know what are the eligible conditions that they can ask for. Thank you, Seema. And here are some changes specific to ODSP. So I guess this is also kind of an OW thing, but there are also reports, anecdotally, that TESS, which administers OW, is no longer issuing new ODSP applications, so OW recipients can move on to ODSP, which has, you know, more money and more benefits, and there's definitely some advantages. So I know there's some ongoing advocacy around this issue. And this is very recent information from this week. And the situation is very fluid around this. That is the latest. What else? So ODSP and the Disability Adjudication Unit, or DAU, which is the part of ODSP that decides whether or not somebody has a disability and can get on ODSP, basically. They're granting extensions for late filings of internal reviews. And they're also granting extensions for the late filing of disability determination packages or medical review packages, particularly when the reason is that like there was COVID-related delays. So for example, it took a really long time to get an appointment with a doctor because they were really busy with COVID. So if anybody is having problems getting their things into ODSP on time, you should definitely call the number 1-888-256-6758 to request an extension, or speak to your local legal clinic for advice. And also, so ODSP and DAU are accepting internal review requests that are signed by legal clinic staff on behalf of clients due to social distancing. So earlier I mentioned the COVID-19 emergency benefit, which is the one-time discretionary benefit. So it's discretionary, which means that the worker can basically decide whether or not to give it to you, and you can't appeal their decision to the Social Benefits Tribunal. You can get up to $100 for an individual and $200 for a family. So it's meant to cover additional costs incurred in March and April due to COVID-19. These include, but are not necessarily limited to, hygiene and personal protective supplies, cleaning supplies, non-medical transportation, or additional costs for staple foods. So to access the benefit, speak to your worker. And anecdotally, we've heard of people who have had a really hard time accessing this benefit. We've heard stories of people who, incurred additional costs in like one area of their life due to having to homeschool their kids, but also for staple foods because the cost of food went up. So they went in and asked for the homeschooling cost, and their worker apparently accused them of trying to cheat the system. And it sounded like it was a very hostile conversation. And because they were flustered, they didn't think to mention the additional cost of foods and other expenses they incurred that might have gotten the worker to put them on. So I would definitely recommend, if anybody wants to apply for this benefit, be as prepared as humanly possible for that phone call with the worker, with all of the different ways that your costs have gone up, to give yourself the best chance of being able to access it. Okay, so Seema mentioned CERB earlier. And so there is some interaction with CERB and OW ODSP. So if you are on OW or ODSP and you are working and were working and you meet the eligibility criteria that Seema earlier mentioned, so, lost your job, the $5,000 a year, like that kind of stuff, you can apply for CERB. They expect you to declare your income. So you have to declare your CERB income to OW or ODSP. If you don't, potentially your OW ODSP file can be suspended or closed. Earlier, I mentioned that they're not stopping payments of OW or ODSP for failure to report income. However, I haven't heard any indication that that will continue to be true for the indefinite future. So that is something to be very careful of. And you can also have an overpayment assessed on your file, which means that OW or ODSP decide that they paid you too much money and you owe them money and you have to now pay back the money. which for a lot of people who are on OW or ODSP, it can be very onerous, especially if the overpayment has been going on for a lengthy period of time, and it ends up being thousands and thousands of dollars. So one note about that is that people who accessed Ontario Works on or after March 1st, while waiting to be able to apply to CERB while it was still being rolled out, and are then retroactively ineligible for Ontario Works because of the amount they got for CERB, they shouldn't have an overpayment assessed, according to like internal ministry documents. However, I will note that the language is shouldn't and not wouldn't. So I would be careful. So there's a danger there, but definitely if you're in that situation and CERB was not available, you got on Ontario Works, then you got on CERB, and then they assessed an overpayment. Talk to your community legal clinic for advice. Okay, so treatment of CERB income by Ontario Works and ODSP. Yes. So MCSS is their documents. They say that they're not treating it as employment income, but they're treating CERB as very similar to employment income. And this, I'm not totally sure how they're treating it differently. It's basically as employment income. So, and it's different if you're on OW or ODSP and when you accessed OW. So if you're applying for OW or you've only been on OW since March 1st, 2020 or later, CERB payments will be deducted dollar for dollar when determining eligibility for social assistance, which means in most, if not all instances, if you're getting the $2,000 a month from CERB, you're pretty much not eligible to be on OW because it's more money. So that's basically what that means. If you've been, oh, sorry, can I go back one? Thank you. I clicked something. If you've been on Ontario Works since before March 1st, 2020, so you're a more long-term Ontario Works recipient, or you're on or applying for ODSP, CERB payments in that case get treated as employment income and qualify for partial exemption. So which means that you can keep the first $200 and then after that, 50% of each additional dollar is exempt income. So basically they claw back half of your CERB after the $200. And if you're on OW or ODSP and you become financially ineligible because the CERB payments were too much, you'll stop getting money from Ontario Works or ODSP, but they'll still keep you on so that you can keep your health benefits and case management supports. Oops. Okay, so a note about CERB and rent geared to income housing. So if you live in rent geared to income housing and you're receiving CERB, it may lead to a rent increase. If you live in rent geared to income housing and you do not declare your CERB income to your housing provider, you may end up accruing rent arrears, and that may eventually lead to your eviction. So it's important to report the CERB income to your housing provider if you are in rent geared to income. So now there's some changes to the Social Benefits Tribunal, which is where Ontario Works and ODSP decisions get appealed. once it's passed the interim review stage. So once again, this is more for legal practitioners, but the SBT is accepting appeals signed by legal clinic staff on behalf of clients. Once again, to respect social distancing protocols and that kind of thing. So right now, they're prioritizing interim assistance hearings and scheduling those earlier. And all hearings have been converted to telephone hearings. So whereas before it was all in-person hearings, now it's all over the telephone. There is definitely some pros and cons to this approach. And it may be advisable to request an adjournment. Normally, I believe you have within 15 days, if you're in this situation where you had a live in-person hearing scheduled and they changed it to a telephone hearing, you have, I believe, 15 days from when they change, when the notice of hearing is issued, changing it to a telephone hearing to ask to object and adjourn to get an in-person hearing. No, there's an argument that can be made that the decision maker has to be able to observe you and see your body language to assess your credibility and whether you're believable. They will not necessarily grant you. Oh, another reason might be technology or telephone problems. Like some people live in areas with bad connections to phones, or their phones are just terrible and drop calls all the time, or they end up getting garbled, or don't have reliable access to a telephone. That may also be reasons to request an adjournment. And you can file for the adjournment and ask for it before the hearing. They may or may not grant it. But if they don't grant it, you have another opportunity at the start of the telephone hearing with the individual board member to request an adjournment. But I feel I'm getting a little bit too nitty-gritty about this, so I'm just going to move on. Change. Thank you, Seema. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So yes, there are many other changes in programs. So I'm going to run through these relatively quickly and maybe with a bit less detail. So the Canada Child Benefit, which is a federal program giving money to parents. So there's a one-time increase in the CCB of $300 per child in May 2020. So there's also similarly, but provincially, there's a new thing called Ontario Support for Families in Ontario, which is a one-time payment of $200 per child aged between 0 and 12 years old, or $250 per child with special needs who is aged between 0 and 21, and who are no longer in school or daycare due to COVID-19. I just found out about this yesterday, and I'm super jazzed to apply. And yeah, you have to apply, I believe for that one, it's only online, but you can apply for that one. Also, the provincial government of Ontario is apparently giving out 21,000 free tablets, like iPads, with free data up until June, provided by some telecommunications company. I can't remember which one, doesn't really matter, for quote, Ontario students in need. Yeah. So there's also a new thing that was recently announced, for which I don't have like super accurate information or like up to date necessarily, but it's the Canada Emergency Student Benefit. So it's basically because the CERB was missing some people. So this is designed to fill some of the gap. So it's for students or recent graduates for whom COVID-19 is a barrier to finding work. And people would be eligible to receive $1,250 per month per student, or $1,750 per month if they have dependents or have a disability themselves. And that's for, it's time limited, it's for a few months. Oh, going back. Okay, so there's also another thing for students called the Canada Student Service Grant. This is another federal initiative. So it's for post-secondary students who are going to school in the fall of 2020, and they can get up to $5,000 if they do a national service thing. So the federal government is rolling out a new national service program to put students to work and get this grant. Now there's gains. So the guaranteed annual income for low-income seniors in Ontario, that got doubled for the next 6 months. So now individuals will be getting 166, eligible individuals will be getting 166 per month, and couples will be getting 332 per month. And that's for 6 months. There's also a one-time increase to the GST slash HST tax credit if you filed taxes in 2018 or 19. So the average increase is $400 for an individual or $600 per couple. And that all depends on, you know, what's in your tax forms. And that's a one-time increase. And you have to file taxes to get that one. There's also been some more money to expand Meals on Wheels services, which deliver meals to seniors or chronically ill disabled people, which anecdotally, I do know that our local Meals on Wheels program has been way busier with people staying at home and all that kind of thing, while their volunteer base has gone way down because of everybody staying at home. So that's a welcome thing. Once again, remember to seek legal advice. We're just giving general information here, not tailored to any particular situation. With a lot of the social assistance stuff and the CERB and CSB and actually all of it, it's really full of details and nitty-gritty, moving parts. So it's a bit complicated, especially when the different areas interact with each other. So definitely get legal advice. So you can reach us, Neighborhood Legal Services, if you're in our catchment area, at 416-861-0677, extension 702 to do an intake, or you can start one online at www.nlstoronto.org. And if you're not in our catchment area, which once again is basically the Don River to Young, and then Bloor down to the islands, you can find your local legal aid clinic at www.legalaid.on.ca/legal-clinics. Questions?
Thanks so much, guys. This is, obviously very complicated, and the fact that the situation is changing so quickly, and that you've gotten all this information together, I think is a really huge benefit. There's a question that's come in through YouTube, which is whether someone who is receiving ODSP and is currently a full-time college student will be eligible to receive the CESB, the Canada Emergency Student Benefit. So, this sort of interaction between the CESB and ODSP for someone who's a full-time student.
I don't have a definitive answer on that either way, unfortunately. So maybe, but I'm not totally sure. Definitely get advice before you apply.
It seems to me that this benefit is, or many of these benefits are generally treated as employment income, so that certainly if someone is going to apply for such a benefit, they should be reporting that as income for the purposes of their social assistance reporting. Would you say that that's correct?
I would definitely report for sure. I haven't seen anything on how OW and ODSP will be treating CESB income. They've put some stuff out about how they'll be treating CERB income. And I'm not sure if they'll treat it the same or if they'll make some distinctions.
Yes, but I do agree, Brendan, that I mean, they haven't issued any specific policy about how they would treat this benefit, but generally the rule of thumb is to report your income to your worker. So if you receive that benefit, yeah, it's important to report it.
Okay, thank you. And there are a lot of questions that have come in over the course of your presentations. So I'll take a stab at posing them to you. I guess we can say that since these rules have been coming out so quickly and changes to programs have been coming out so quickly, we're really doing our best to try to keep up and understand how all of these programs interact and are going to impact the different income security programs. The provincial social assistance programs. So if we don't know the answer, we can also commit to finding out and follow up after the fact.
Exactly.
So for those who have registered on Zoom, we do have your email addresses, which is a great way to stay in touch. So with that caveat, maybe I'll just jump into the questions. One question is for folks who are homeless and have increased costs for food because of agencies' reduced programs and services. How can they be successful in accessing the $100 discretionary benefit if they're on OW or ODSP?
Do you want to take?
So, do you want to do it or should I do it?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I would say have as much information and evidence to show how your costs have gone up. So anything you can get your hands on that can help demonstrate that costs have gone up and like all the explanations, because the worker doesn't necessarily know how all these things work. So maybe like explaining like where you normally would access, what agencies you'd use to access food and how they've scaled back and how that's affected you, and just be as prepared as possible to really walk them through it and explain it. Because with discretionary benefits and workers, it really depends on who your worker is, and some get certain things better than others. So yeah, that would be my general advice.
Thank you. So be prepared when you make the call that you do have some, you have to make the case for yourself. It is discretionary and people may not automatically get it. So just have some language at the ready for your rationale for needing it, which is, we can editorialize about what we think about that, perhaps in another forum. More of a comment from a clinic colleague who confirmed that in their experience, OW is not processing ODSP applications, and also just sharing that it's incredibly challenging getting through to an assigned caseworker on the phone. So usually best just to call the main line, at least from their experience with OW. So that's a bit of a pro tip sharing. Thank you for that. And then the next question, is a bit more of a technical one. Is the deadline to apply for additional discretionary benefits throughout OW and ODSP still April 30th, or has that been extended?
I'm not sure. I think we may have to get back to people on that. I'm not certain.
I'm seconding what Seema says. Yeah, I need to check that.
Okay, thank you. I mean, these questions are great. They let us know what people want to know. Okay, the next question is, if people on OW or ODSP pay back the CERB because they pick up a new job or realize they applied in error, would it still be considered an overpayment by OW and ODSP, and should it be reported?
So if the individual received the money but paid it back, should it still be reported?
That's right.
Interesting question. I think, I mean, they should report it as soon as they get it. So they may get it, realize they don't qualify, pay it back. I think they should still inform the worker that occurred. And then that way that there shouldn't be an overpayment from the social assistance side. Because if they reported, the necessary exemptions would apply anyway, right?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, always report new income.
Yes.
If it's been paid back quickly, a reasonable assessment would not lead to an overpayment, but if it has taken some time to pay it back, there may be a short period of overpayment owing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, where do I declare CERB payment, a CERB payment on an OW monthly report? And maybe I'm just going to generalize the question more, because just to reiterate what has already been said, we can't give specific legal advice, but more general legal information. If you want specific advice about your situation, do get in touch with your local clinic to get a consult. So more generally, on an OW monthly report, where does one declare the CERB payment? Is it statement, should it be listed as income from employment? And does one declare 1,800 only, since 200 is able to be kept?
So I am not necessarily familiar with how the forms work. I will say to declare the whole amount, because then OW will apply the necessary exemption for the next month's check. So apply the full amount that you received from CERB. They are treating it as employment income, so I presume that that's where it would be included on the form, but I think it may be best to ask the worker, the person's worker, just to be sure. But do declare the entire amounts.
Yes. And just the document I'm looking at from MCSS says that CERB income reporting will operate similar to the current earnings reporting in Ontario Works and ODSP. Further details will follow shortly. So I'm not even sure they necessarily know yet. Yeah, but just to reiterate what Seema said, definitely declare the full amount and don't do the deductions yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the next couple of questions have to do with the free tablets that are available. One question wonders, are these available to preschool age children, given that the early years centers are closed? And generally, where can one apply? Where can parents apply for this?
I understand that I think it's through the school boards that this is being done, but I don't have too much detail on that at the moment.
Okay, so maybe we can make some information about that available on our website. Do note that Neighborhood Legal Services, as we're trying to keep abreast of all the different changes in different areas of law, we do have a COVID-19 legal information page. It supplements our sister organization, Steps to Justice, which is run through Community Legal Education Ontario, which is a great one-stop resource for all kinds of good legal information. We're trying to supplement it with information that's relevant for our catchment area. So do check back, and we'll make information about these tablets available there in the coming days.
I was going to add something, sorry, to the previous question about declaring CERB income. Just that if not the full amount is not declared, it could result in an overpayment in the future if someone is audited. Yeah, just to make that clear.
Okay. Key takeaway: declare.
Yes.
Declare. Okay, thank you. I'll move on to the next question then. One viewer notes that they thought the $300 increase to the Canada Child Tax benefit, the Canada Child benefit, was for the entire 2019-2020 year. In the presentation, it notes it would be payable May 2020. Maybe can you clarify that piece?
Sure, what was that?
In the presentation, there's an indication that the child tax benefit increase is going to be made in May 2020. And a viewer writes that they thought the increase was going to be applicable for the entire 2019-2020 year.
My understanding is that it's a one-time increase of $300, payable in May 2020.
Just along those lines, there are a couple of other questions around the Canada Child benefit. One is whether someone has to apply for that or whether the $300 is added automatically. And the other question is whether it is up to $300 or whether it is simply automatically $300.
My understanding is that if people who are currently receiving it should get an automatic bump for May.
And it's my understanding is also that it's automatically $300. It's not it doesn't change. It's just a $300 top up.
Yeah.
You're muted, Jenny.
Thank you. And I'm not sure if this was added just in the same theme of child tax benefits. Does it apply to everyone or just people on OW or ODSP?
People who are currently getting the Canada Child benefit will get the automatic bump. So I think that's whether they're on OW, OD, or working or whatever. Anybody getting this benefit should get the bump in May.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, the next question is, if you were on OW prior to March 1st and you get the CERB, oh, it's more of a comment. It was a comment to another presenter who asked a question. I think that's been answered. I'm sorry. I'll move on. I read it too quickly. Question about the OW and ODSP offices. Are workers receiving faxes at this point?
Sorry, you mind repeating?
Sorry, I was muted. OW and ODSP offices, are workers receiving faxes at this point?
Yes.
I believe that's true. They're limiting the number of staff they have in the office. They're close to the public, but there should be someone there receiving faxes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely received faxes from them this week. So the machines are still working.
Okay, excellent. The gains for seniors, are they automatically received, or do folks have to apply for that, the increase to the gains benefit?
I believe that's automatic. So I think anybody currently receiving it should see the increase on their, however they receive that money, whether it's check or direct deposit.
Okay. Another question related to just the general communications of the local OW and ODSP offices. Commonly, people are experiencing real frustration in getting through. What do you recommend?
That's a good question. I mean, I've had difficulty getting through myself, just staying on hold for a while and finally getting hold of a worker. I was advised that they have limited staff there at the moment. I believe a colleague from a legal clinic mentioned calling the central line if you can't reach your worker directly, and trying to get connected through that. And I think, yes, just trying to be a bit patient. And maybe sending something in writing by fax if it takes too long to reach someone by phone.
Okay. This question is it's been touched on already, but I think there's power and benefit in reiterating this. The question is, I was not eligible for the CERB. I applied for it by mistake. How can I return the money to CRA to avoid an audit in the future?
Okay, that's a good question. There was information available on their website. Maybe we can make it available on our website. Don't have it offhand, but there are ways to contact them to pay it back. We can make that available.
I believe there's a link on their website, like a thing you can push to do it, but yeah, like Seema said, we'll figure out the exact details.
Great. Okay, thank you. Is there a special application to apply for the Ontario Students in Need? This new program announced this week.
Oh, I'm not.
Oh, excuse me. This is about the tablets, I guess. Ontario Students.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see. So we'll find out and circulate that information.
Yeah.
And just about the tablets thing. So I'm reading an article right now about it, like half listening, half reading it. But the head is from the Sudbury.com, and the headline is "Confusion. Many left with the impression families could access free iPads."
Right.
Only one Sudbury school board says it's buying more iPads through partnership with Apple and Rogers. So it's looking like the on-the-ground reality of this program is less straightforward than the government's press release made it look. But we'll get more information about that.
There is a question on YouTube specifically about folks who are receiving CPPD, so that's Canada Pension Plan Disability, and in particular someone for whom that is their sole source of income. To your knowledge, are there any benefits that those people, additional benefits or top-ups that those people may be eligible for in this time?
Yes, I have not come across any information regarding that, but I think it's an area we can look into, and we can follow up with some information.
Yeah, I haven't come across anything specific to CPPD, but I mean, there might be some things that are not specific to CPPD that people could access, like the HSE tax credits maybe, like might be one thing that they might qualify for, but yeah.
So it might depend on whether someone is, whether someone has children or whether they have certain other circumstances that surround that.
Yeah.
Okay, some good pro tips. Ariel Weber, a colleague, we should have you as a honorary member of this presentation. Thank you for sharing your experiences. He indicates that, they indicate that they've heard that there are no new iPads. Allegedly, the iPads were already distributed to each school before COVID began. So I think this really behooves us to put some good resources up on our site about the digital divide. That's very real right now, as so many programs and services go online, and everyone's telling you to click on such and such website to get services. Any and all resources that we can find out about how to access technology and to do it in any programs that provide for cheaper Wi-Fi access, we're going to make those available on our website. So please do check back in the next couple of days. The next question is, it's a bit specific, and I think the answer is that this person should definitely get a legal consult. So I'll try to make it sort of generic. The issue is somebody who's on ODSP. They were advised to apply for EI. It looks like they weren't eligible though for EI. They've been given an EI access code, and they have received the CERB. Should they be reporting to EI? So it sounds complicated, and it sounds quite fact specific. I think the answer is call your local legal clinic for a good in-depth consult, but I'll let you field it as well.
I think that would be best. I'm just weary about giving the wrong information.
Okay. Another pro tip from our colleague Ariel Weber is that there's only 3 tests. The municipal offices that administer the Ontario Works program, only 3 offices operating right now. Metro Hall, York Humber, and Scarborough Village. And when you call their main line, any of the 3 offices will pick up. So the likelihood of getting through to your individual caseworker is probably quite low right now, but I think they're operating on kind of a just-in-time. Anybody who picks up can access your file and speak to you. That's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah.
And it looks like we have our last question here. In order to report the period, it's usually for the month. Do you report for the entire amount for 2 periods? And the next period runs April 15th to May 15th. Each period is for 1 month. I think.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, I think the question is, the message is being picked up that any income has to be reported.
Right.
And if you fail to report in a month, can you make up that report by reporting in the next month for the 2-month period?
Sorry, is this for OW or ODSP or what's?
It's not specific. I don't know if there's a different answer for program.
I think for either. So usually how it works, yes, you report for the past month, and then the any exemptions, anything applies to the next following month's check. I haven't faced this question before. I'm not sure what their policy is at OW or ODSP, but I think it's safer to just declare the income even if it's late. In any case, even if it's the month has passed, to still do it. And I believe they can still apply the necessary exemptions to the next month, the following month.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. As I said, sorry, the question had to do with ODSP. The
Okay.
person was clarified.
Yes. Daniel, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, and maybe not quite understanding the question 100%, but I'd be careful about, like, if the question is whether you get $2,000 in 1 month and then you forgot to declare it or you didn't declare it, and then should you get it the next month, should you declare
For both?
$4,000 for the next month? I would be careful about that and try to make it clear that the income was in separate months.
Yes.
Because of the way the income limits and all that stuff works.
Exactly.
So maybe talk to your worker about making sure it's clear.
What it has to be clear what amount applied to which period, basically.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And another question is, a few questions came in after I said last question. We do have until 12:30 if we need to go that long. So do send in your questions if we haven't answered them yet. The question is, can income be reported to OW or ODSP over the phone for people who are self-isolating and not connected to the online system, either because the worker is unreachable or they've never added an email to the system?
I believe that the requirements for reporting are a bit relaxed right now, aren't they, Daniel? I'm not sure.
I mean, documentary requirements are generally relaxed. and that they're not suspending people for failure to report.
Mhm.
But I think you're still expected to report. I don't have the exact answer. I think you should be able to do it over the phone, but not 100% sure about the granular detail of mechanically how one does that. So I can't give a better answer.
Okay. Another question's come in. If someone is on ODSP and has received the CERB, for those who would qualify or not qualify for EI, how will this be deducted from their ODSP income? Is it like employment first 200 and not deducted and then dollar for dollar after that? I think this was answered before, but again, it's these granular details are really important, so probably worth reiterating.
Yeah. So it's the first 200. So you keep the first 200, and then after that, it's 50%. So they claw back half of what you make after 200. And if you make so much that you're financially ineligible for ODSP, they still keep you on ODSP so you can access the benefits, just not the money, depending on the details of how much you're getting from each program. And it's for Ontario Works if you're on before March 1st.
And if is it correct that if you got on Ontario Works after March 1st, you don't get to keep that first $200? It's dollar for dollar clawed back.
Yeah, and they use it to determine your eligibility to receive Ontario Works. So I think in most instances, they'd find that you are making too much money from CERB to qualify to be on Ontario Works. And I think they would just tell you just stay on CERB and keep collecting that money, and then come back to Ontario Works when that runs out.
Okay. So those are the questions that have come in on Zoom. Brendan, do you have any other questions that have come in through YouTube Live?
No, they've been answered. There was some lively discussion about whether, in fact, the $300 Canada child benefit is one time only, and the conclusion was that yes, it is one time only. It is for May 2020.
I will say, Catherine Manson in the chat, she mentioned, it has to be someone who filed their taxes in 2018 that would receive the benefits.
Okay, good. And perhaps we'll make this the last question then. Thank you. I noticed that 46 participants have stayed with us till the bitter end. So thank you for sticking it out through the questions and answers. Maybe we'll make this the last one and then we can let everybody get on with their day, but certainly not the last conversation as we continue to grapple with all these new rules. So the question is there any insight on some local ODSP offices? Sorry, I just want to digest the question, make sure that I'm understanding it correctly. Requested that they apply for EI, even if they don't qualify. This may have been asked previously, and now they have received CERB and are being asked to report and will keep receiving CERB even though they don't qualify. So I think the answer is if you're on ODSP and you've applied for something that you're not eligible for, you should probably reach out to your local legal clinic and get a consult about the consequences of that.
Yes.
There's like very, very likely to be an overpayment owing.
Yes.
But I'm sorry, I'll let you field it as well. Do you have anything to add?
I think that's right, to get specific legal advice about the situation. There will likely be consequences. There always is if someone is receiving money they're not eligible for, or they're receiving benefits from two sources or more than one source at the same time. So it's important to talk to your legal clinic, and yes, an overpayment is usually what results from that.
Okay. So, yeah, the question is just sent in some clarifications. So again, we do encourage you to get a consult with your local clinic about your specific situation. And keep in mind too, the CERB, it has to be reapplied for every 4 weeks. So if somebody knows that they may have gotten CERB that first month that they're not eligible for, there's always the option to not reapply in coming months if you know that there's going to be an overpayment and a financial consequence that's just going to get bigger with each month of further income. So we don't necessarily like or endorse all these rules. This is just how it is right now, and we want people to understand those consequences. Maybe we'll wrap it up there. If other questions come in, we can collect them and do our best to answer them on our website. Again, this recording and the slides will be available on our website in the coming days. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you're staying well and that you're safe. And do reach out to your local clinics. We're all operating, even if social distancing measures require us to provide our services virtually. We are here to serve the communities throughout Ontario, and so stay in touch. Thank you very much, Seema. Thank you very much, Daniel. And thank you very much, Brendan, for organizing all the logistics. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.